are back. Aquarian Anarchy. We have Amaterasu Solar. She's back for another rendition. We got some fun things planned for you. Time to get into some deeper anarchy stuff and just kind of like spread our wings a little bit in that space. So we are ready to go. Hope you are. Let's get it. Our quote for tonight comes from Benjamin Tucker. It has ever been the tendency of power to add to itself, to enlarge its sphere, to encroach beyond the limits set for it. And where the habit of resisting such encroachment is not fostered, and the individual is not taught to be jealous of his rights, individuality gradually disappears, and the government or state becomes the all in all. It just seems like every time you put one of these quotes up, Marcus, it's telling us exactly what's going on right now, in real time. And we have another one of our good anarchist friends here to join us tonight. Marcus, why don't you bring everybody up to speed with what you and Amy have been talking about and how this second appearance has come about.
Sure. Well, first of all, Amy and I have known each other now for several years because we met on Float and had a positive conversation, just so that people that haven't seen the first rendition of her visiting us, this is the sequel. But more or less, we became friends on Float and began talking. And eventually she was like, "Hey, I kind of like come on your show and talk." And I was like, "All right, come on. We'll bring you on. We need another good anarchist voice to talk with us." She has a lot of ideas and a lot of videos about those ideas. And she's been writing more recently, a lot more. But she's really grounded in ethical understanding of how to do this, how to be an anarchist. And I find that a really inspiring and refreshing change from from some of our anarchist brood who aren't as understanding and frankly as friendly. But basically, we have been doing a lot of interviewing of more newer anarchist people that are kind of coming to this, particularly with Jeff a couple weeks ago. Right. And so I thought it would be a good idea to bring her back and kind of talk about where we're at with anarchy and what the development of that is from somebody who's been in the freedom movement, if you will, for a long time. And and she's also got a lot of really good introductory material too, for those that are interested in learning about anarchy and ethics and those kinds of things. So that's kind of where I was at with it. And I also thought it would be a good idea to let her kind of talk about what she's doing new, because it has been some time.
Yeah. Well, Amy, welcome back. Let's go.
You. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Nicco.
There he is.
Hello.
I don't know that there's anything new per se that I've been doing, but I have been, working very hard to raise awareness that we don't have to consent to the system that's in place around us. We don't have to, we can say, I don't consent. And we can deal with that system under duress only. That may be something I hadn't mentioned in the first round. But continue to do what you're doing, but make it clear that anytime you deal with that system, it's under duress.
Tell us about how that how you, like, on a day-to-day basis, what's an example of how that kind of manifests itself, and where you have maybe an opportunity to express that, and then maybe what your experience has been with like how that's received, and whether you get like some weird looks or you get some people who are like, maybe you feel like a light bulb's going off for them,
Well, I I don't know that there's a whole lot of opportunity in my life because I don't deal with the system as a rule.
Mm.
You know, I
Mhm.
also have done something in the system that I don't consent to, and I did it under duress. I want to establish that.
Mhm.
I have corrected my status from debtor to creditor.
Mm.
Mm.
And it was a gift from a friend who knows that I have absolutely nothing, but he does that for a living. And so what the system has jurisdiction over is the all caps name, which is
Mhm.
a trust
Mhm.
at this point. And I am the living, breathing human being that they don't have jurisdiction over.
Right, for sure.
With the exception always is if you break the 3 laws of ethics. If you
Why don't you
go
go over
there,
those again?
anybody has the right to hold you down and arrest you and try you and give you an ethical consequence for your behavior. But as far as anything else, they don't have any jurisdiction over me. I don't
Absolutely.
I don't register vehicles. I don't get driver's licenses. And I've
Mm.
had some talks with the police. Uh, at this point, they just leave me alone, but they've always let me go, despite being wiggity wig at times. They haven't impounded vehicles and hauled me off or nothing. It's just like, okay, well, actually, a couple of times they wrote me tickets, which I have I think it may only be uh, on Hive, where I usually most of my stuff is on Odyssey, but
Mm.
Mhm.
before Odyssey started doing articles as well, I was posting things on Hive, and it's called Walking the Walk, which I tell about the first time I was stopped. And when I write to the court, I say, everything I do is under duress. You have commanded a trust to a non-corporeal entity to
Mm.
uh, show up in your court. And I'd say that's absurd, but
Mhm.
Physically
you can
impossible.
consider the non-corporeal entity present an
Right.
equal absurdity. Have fun
Right.
with that. And I don't hear anything back. I have not been arrested. They don't mess with
Mm.
me. Uh, so, I do recommend that people see what they can do about changing their status. And the nice thing about my friend is a lot of places will make up the paperwork, send it back to you, and you get to try to figure out who to send it, how to send it, and the whole 9 yards. Well, my friend takes the paperwork, files it for you, you know, does virtually all of the work. There may be
Mm.
like one thing that you have to mail off yourself.
That
But
sounds
other than
cool.
that, and I'd give a site, but unfortunately, the person who was in charge of the site kind of vanished on him. And
Uh,
Mm.
then the site went down, and it's like, oh, great, now what?
Mhm.
But yeah.
yeah, I've a long time just say no, and I think another person that's really good at doing that is Dan Berman. Dan Taxation is Theft Berman. He's good
Mhm.
at just saying fuck you and your laws. I'm not going to follow them, and
Mhm.
Yep.
same deal. And I'm not as good as either of you, but I do what I can to not participate. And I'm not quite to the level that you're at yet, but I
Well,
endeavor
all
to
you,
get there.
all you have to do is say, can you prove that I am subject?
Mhm. And I understand that. And the one problem that I run into is when you do a lot of those kinds of things, they do things to stop you from being employable. And I'm not, yeah. And so for me, I still need my day job. Now, if you want to solve that problem for me, people, go to the Patreon and $5.
Yes. While we're on the subject, yes, exactly. That's right.
but but largely it's all financial is the reason that I've not done that. I do not participate as often as I can, but sometimes you have to play the game, and I think the key is to play the game as little as possible.
And under duress.
For
I mean,
sure.
I use money under duress.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Everything money for me is under duress because I know that we don't need it.
Yeah.
I know that we can eliminate money from trade and barter on up to electronic bits. I know we can get rid of it. So I cannot participate in money without being under duress.
Sure.
Well, I can't tell you enough like how much like of like a tremendous respect I have for because I know that it comes at a cost to do things where because it you know the system for whatever you want to call it has its illusory benefits. I'll call them that because it's like this. Well, yeah, well you get to be a slave, but look at this awesome plantation you get to live on, and you know
Yes.
you're still not free to go, and you're still subject to a lot of this stuff. And I will say that one of the things that's like the most challenging, especially if you wake up to this notion and this understanding of your own sovereignty, your own autonomy, and the fact that you've been sold a bill of goods all the way from kindergarten up to adulthood until you wake up and realize that it's all BS, is that when you get yourself entrenched in the lifestyle that living under that system provides, extracting yourself from that comes at the cost of having to give all that stuff up, or a lot of it, most of it, whatever. And a lot of folks are, myself included to a large degree, aren't willing to make those sacrifices. And
Right.
it's a huge challenge because you got kids and school and or whatever, or like Marcus was saying, job, or where you live, and it's like, all right, well, where do I go if I'm not going to do this?
That's where correcting your status can help you. Because once you have corrected your status, then you are trustee for the trust that's the all cap name, and it gives you an awful lot more freedom. I will say that I do have an advantage being elderly and on a pittance of Social Security. I mean, it's not even half a studio apartment. Okay. That'll give you a clue.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that's an advantage to me because there's really nothing I have to give up. I don't have to worry about anybody putting the word out saying, don't hire her. I mean, I've already been through that. I spent over 10 years applying for jobs, even though I wasn't really sure I could do them because I was starting to get to the point where doing work was slower than the employer was wanting to see from me, with the arthritis and all that. And, but they denied me the disability, telling me I was faking it. Let me tell you, that set me to fury. But
for sure,
they, oh gee, I forgot where I was going.
You were talking
us old people,
Go ahead, Chad.
I'm sitting here with very little, and in fact, I'm technically homeless. and I am blessed with a friend who lets me crash on the floor. So, but yeah, they can't take a whole lot from me.
Well, but the Social Security, the fact that you're still getting that, like how were you able to pull it?
Well,
Don't incriminate yourself or anything like that,
no,
but
they owe the trust. I just
Ah,
corrected my status. The trust is the recipient
okay,
of the Social Security, and the
gotcha.
trust pays me for my trustee services, what little it can.
Yeah,
Right.
gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense now. All
So
right.
yeah, it's the trust that
Mm,
gets all the money, not me personally.
mhm,
Except,
Yeah.
mhm,
like I said,
Right. And the thing is, I mean, these are just the tip of the iceberg to the traps that they use to get you ensnared, you
oh yeah,
know, and it's and it continues to get worse. It seems like every year they come up with new ways to control your actions, to make it to where you have to do this or that. I'm sure that they are looking at digitizing everything, which will
mm-hmm,
make a lot of things very difficult for people that don't, because believe it or not, in this world there are people who don't get on the internet. I know that people are like, ooh, at work the other day, my coworkers were talking about that, that their grandma or whatever doesn't ever get on the internet, but she's got to get on the internet once a year to file her taxes.
mhm,
And,
mm,
that sort of thing is continuing to get more and more. And I think
true,
one of the sources that we're going to see more of that is as we see the further rise of the World Economic Forum and those group of people taking more of a control. Would you? So I guess that brings us. First of all, Nicco, do you have anything you want to?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask before we switch topics.
Sure.
So, what's the definition of the name where it's all capital letters on your letter or on your mail, opposed to like it not being capitalized all the way? Is there
okay.
a difference
If
between that?
yeah, if it's capitalized, it is not me. It is the trust.
Mm.
And as trustee, I can open the mail and all that.
mm.
Uh, but um, it. How do I say this? Um, it winds up that they can only go after the trust. They can only put the trust in prison. They
Mm,
can't touch me unless, of course, like I said, if I break the 3 laws of
mhm.
ethics, yeah,
And, and
anybody.
Yeah,
so
hit that.
yeah, so again, you covered this the last time with us, but for those that haven't, because it's been about a year and a half,
Yeah,
can
it's
you
been a
line
while.
out Can you line out what those three rules, what those three
Oh, what
laws
the
of
3
ethics
laws
are?
are? Okay.
Yes.
First and foremost, I want to make sure that everybody grasps that these are natural law expressed as the 3 things not to do.
Mhm,
So and we know it's natural law because if you ask anyone if it's okay to do these things to them, they will say no.
Right.
To say yes would be giving consent, and it
mhm,
leaves the question unanswered. Anyway, the
mhm,
3 laws of ethics are: do not willfully and without fully informed consent take, hurt, or kill the flesh of another sentient sapient being, human, mostly on our planet.
mhm.
Uh, do not willfully and without fully informed consent take or damage anything that does not belong to you alone. And 3, do not willfully and without do not willfully defraud another, which can only happen without fully informed
Right,
consent.
right, right.
Okay, so don't hurt or kill, don't take or damage, don't defraud.
Mhm.
That's natural law framed as the things not to do.
Perfect.
And that fully informed consent is the key, because that's
Yes.
and as we've witnessed over the last couple of years, fully informed consent is just kind of like out the window.
Well,
They have done everything they can to shield
yes,
informed people from being informed, and to
absolutely.
just end run around any kind of consent
Well,
by forcing people to
that's
do
the
things.
reason I don't consent to the legal
Hmm.
system, because it thwarts ethics far
Hmm.
more than it serves them.
For
Right.
sure.
You know,
Right.
if the legal system was held to ethical standards, which ethical ground is higher than
Hmm.
legal ground.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay. So I stand on legal on ethical ground. And if they I mean the whole legal system just leaves me aghast.
Hmm.
As
Well,
it should.
I think this is a good Marcus. If you don't mind, if you and Nicco don't mind,
Sure.
I want to kind of take us in a little direction real quick. This is one of our good friends, Jeff Charles, who we talked about a minute here. Jeff is a I don't know. I guess the way I would describe him is up until about, I don't know, 6 months to a year or two ago, when he started to. I'm not going to claim full credit for us, but a lot of the credit goes to this show, this podcast, and these three gentlemen with me here. But or these two gentlemen with me, Marcus and Nicco. But Jeff was a conservative with some liberty kind of leanings, and kind of wrote for a lot of conservative blogs, websites, and those sorts of things. Well, Jeff has turned a corner completely, and he's writing a completely different type of content now, and starting to, now that he already had a big platform, now that platform is being exposed to these ideas in a way that Jeff is really good at, like, making this stuff palatable to people who previously would have been very much willing to go along with the GOP, maybe not necessarily the McCarthy, Mitch McConnell type GOP, but at least the people who like to say that the Republicans they don't like are rhinos, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so Jeff wrote this piece in response to some. I don't know if you're familiar with who Matt Walsh is and some of the things that he says.
I do.
He's another very prominent, I think he's a Daily Wire YouTuber, who does a lot of
He's a
conservative
fascist.
content, and he is, yes. So that's where I am. So here's the article.
Okay.
I'm going to bring it up on the screen here now. Jeff Charles writes yesterday at 3:15 p.m. He says Matt Walsh goes full authoritarian, suggests the U.S. should be more like Singapore. So here we go, because I want to give you a little, because this is where the next wave of anarchists is coming from, is people who are like starting to see this, like, whoa, hang on, let's take a step back, and let's not let people get away with saying this kind of stuff without putting it under the proper scrutiny. So Jeff says, in case you needed any other reason why conservatism is losing, look no further than some recent tweets posted by the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh. On Monday, he advocated for the U.S. to adopt draconian laws to punish drug dealers and petty thieves. The podcaster took to Twitter to suggest the United States should emulate Singapore in how it deals with drug dealers and petty thieves. He wrote, Singapore is able to have nice things in part because they execute drug dealers by hanging and arrest even petty vandals and thieves and beat them with a cane until they bleed. We don't have nice things because we aren't willing to do what is required to maintain them. Now, that would sound bad enough on its own, but it gets worse. Then he affirmed that he is definitely calling on the United States to pass similar laws to punish criminals. And this is what he said immediately following that, after some of the comments were saying, like, clearly you don't, expect the U.S. to enact this stuff. He says, there are some accusing me of advocating similar laws in this country. And I just want to clarify and say, yes, absolutely, I want these laws in this country. So this is one of your conservative leaders saying this, but then this is one of our good friends, Jeff Charles, responding to it. Naturally, Walsh's comments received a firestorm of criticism, with many pointing out that it violated the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. And Black Guns Matter and Second Amendment advocate and another friend of this show, Maj Toure, argued against beating and killing people for selling a substance that people willingly choose to put in their bodies. He says, imagine advocating for the beating of people who sell a product that other people want. Then imagine not understanding bodily autonomy and its relation to freedom, even for things we disagree with. Then imagine doing both and pretending to understand freedom. Because that's the crazy thing is like some of this stuff, these people claim to be like all about, I'm proud to be an American, all this kind of, like they want to wave the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance and sing the national anthem and all this stuff. And meanwhile, they want to cane people for stuff that they anyway. So
smoking weed.
Right. So then Shane Hazel, who ran for Georgia governor as a libertarian in last year's elections, noted that Singapore imposes other legislation that restricts liberty. Singapore is an open air cage, Shane says. You can't say whatever you want. You can't have guns. You can't protest. Zero privacy. Loads of taxes. Conscription. I'm sorry. And then he says, but prostitution is commonplace. But sure, let's be like Singapore, because this is the kind of stuff that Matt Walsh's claim would just the bad things he doesn't like would go away if you just beat people. And there's still stuff that he wouldn't like there in spite of all this stuff. And also you lose all these freedoms while trying to make it to where things you don't like don't exist. And then even leftist YouTuber Christo Ivalis noted that other countries have similar environment without resorting to brutal punishment methods. How do you explain Scandinavian countries having many of these things with far more humane systems of correction and lower rates of recidivism than the U.S.? And I'm not necessarily advocating for some of the Scandinavian, socialist type stuff or anything like that, and some of the way that they handle things either, but it's certainly less severe and draconian than Singapore. So then Jeff says, before I continue, I will acknowledge that Walt does not represent all conservatives in these views. Nevertheless, a quick glance at the comments on his tweet shows that plenty in the movement agree with his stance. To put it simply, Walsh is wrong. This is an anti-liberty and pro-tyranny stance. The notion that someone would be executed for selling a product that people choose to ingest is the type of authoritarianism many of us condemn when it comes from the left. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, progressives applauded government efforts to force people to take the vaccine. What Walsh is proposing isn't much different. If someone wants to do drugs, the state should not possess the authority to stop them. There is no valid reason to send men with guns and badges to arrest people and throw them in cages over an activity which people choose to partake, especially when they are not violating someone else's rights. Again, back to the three natural laws of ethics. Moreover, caning a petty thief is yet another example of cruel and unusual punishment. Stealing is a violation of someone else's rights, but this treatment does not fit the severity of the crime. One only need look up videos of these beatings to understand the level of brutality involved. The idea that the state should be empowered to mete out such abuse is anathema to those who truly favor limited government. Walsh is not the only one to promote such views. Former President Donald Trump has been rather fond of calling for the death penalty for drug dealers. From where I sit, these are symptoms of a distinctly statist authoritarian movement rising up in the conservative movement. These are important leaders in the movement who have tremendous level of influence, and the fact that they would rather the U.S. be more like Singapore should be a stark warning to those on the right who prefer liberty to authoritarianism. So I just wanted to take the opportunity while we're on the subject of that stuff, because it seemed like it dovetailed very well with that article that Jeff wrote yesterday, because that's kind of where we are, right? It's like we do have some people who are starting to come to their senses about this stuff, that this stuff is wrong. But then you have some people who I thought the last couple of years would have been a real big warning bell that, like, hey, this is the problem when you empower the state this much. This is the kind of stuff they can pull off. And here they come, ready to empower the state to beat their enemies.
Well, you got to take in perception where it's like a lot of people are so okay being told what to do. Mm-hmm. And like they never really had their own thought process on how they would like to move forward. And like they're always so okay with, oh, we're going to college. Oh, well, got to sit in college, or, oh, I got to go to work. And they're just so okay with following inline structures, and if they don't have those structures, sometimes they might go a little crazy.
Yep, very true.
So Are you? I'm curious. What's your reaction to hearing about more people coming our direction? Have you witnessed that as well? And where do you think we stand at convincing others to kind of move in our direction?
Well, I have definitely seen more openness to the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But uh, sometimes I just feel so defeated, and other times I don't. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it's hard to say, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes feel all I'm getting is lip service,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
but then again, maybe not. I keep hoping.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
I just keep letting people know, no, we don't have to consent to this. No, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do it if we don't want to,
right,
unless it's not doing three things.
right, and and I think that for me, I think that that I'm actually quite hopeful because I agree with you that sometimes people, when the rubber meets the road, and we talked about it to an extent, using me as an example, when the rubber meets the road, there are things I'm not prepared to do right now because
Mm-hmm.
I would wind up homeless. I have a little girl that's 12 years old, and I don't want to see her, homeless as
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well.
yeah.
And so there are some limitations, but I also with that think that Rothbard was right, and that when the majority of people, and the majority means 51%,
Mm-hmm.
when the majority of people um, realize that the state is nothing more than a criminal gang, then it will fade away. And just to paraphrase Rothbard, and I think he's right about that. And do you think that we are farther down the road towards a truly free state of being, or do you think that we are further from that state of being than we were the last time we spoke?
I'm going to say actually about the same, only because the key, the 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 true key to freedom is to get rid of that which holds us to their leash.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a good point.
you've explained it. You know, I don't want to do that because if I do, I'll lose the money.
Sure.
And that is their leash on their
Mhm.
slaves.
No,
Is
absolutely. Yep.
is the money.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as I said, we can get rid of it. And I wish I had the wherewithal to build what I did the video about called electrogravitics, gravity control and energy from the ether,
Mhm.
wherein, I explain how I know about this technology and how it works. Uh, how I know about the technology is that my father worked with a gentleman called T. Townsend Brown. And if I don't know the castrated web these days, you may or may not find it if you do a search for T. Townsend Brown. Haven't tried to see if that happens or not. But he was working on electrogravitics. He discovered that when you had an anode and a cathode with a high K, well, with a dielectric between and ran voltage through it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, when it was sitting on a scale, it seemed to lose weight when the positive plate was pointing upward and
Mm.
gain weight when the positive plate was pointing downward. And they were doing all kinds of experiments. They made the negative plate small, the positive plate big, put a high K nonlinear dielectric in the middle, and discovered that they could get more energy out than they were putting in to run the voltage.
Mm.
Nice.
Okay, so
Can't believe
there we go. That's your free energy. And people say, well, there's no such thing as free energy because, you know, conservation and all of that. Well, what they don't understand is that the entire universe is held
Energy.
together by a electrogravito-magnetic field. that feeds it energy.
Sure.
And we can have access to that energy. That's the ether.
Yeah.
That field.
And I think that people lose sight that money is not like this thing to be possessed. It isn't. Money isn't. Yes, we function with money because we have been in this state system. This is why I won't argue with anarcho-communists. I think that we don't know what our society or the economics of our society looks like when you eliminate the state, because of things like what you're talking about, being able to create energy from, in essence, nothing, but being able to do that solves so many problems. And we don't, but at this time, the state runs roughshod over us and takes any advantage that they can and monetizes it. It's why, the Rockefellers and the like, wanted to get a monopoly on all of these kinds of industries, and so that they could, make a profit off of it themselves. Whereas if we were just having free energy all around us and we had access to it, then we wouldn't worry. Like, for instance, my car payment or my car bill to get me to work would go away. I might still go to work because I enjoy my job, but it wouldn't be because I need the money to pay for my groceries,
right,
and things like that. And people want to argue based in a system we're currently in. And
yes,
and we do not know what that system looks like. Maybe, just maybe, communism, as an anarcho-communist would see it, would work inside of a non-governmental system. We just are not there. And what I would argue, which I think agrees with what you're saying, Amy, is that that we need to start breaking ourselves as much as possible from that system, so that we can begin to find out what we can obtain with those kinds of things.
I will say this much. You spoke of wanting to go to work because you love what you do. And that is basically the foundation of what I have. Right now, 80% at least of the jobs that are out there in, overall,
Are
they
not stuff
move,
people want to do.
most jobs people don't want to do, seriously.
Yeah.
But the jobs themselves, overall, just move wealth upward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay, they perform some functions for the store. If you're a cashier, okay, yeah, you're helping the store owner, but then they pay taxes or, you know,
Mhm.
buy something that they pay taxes on, or, whatever. The money overall goes upwards. And that includes not just cashiers, but accounting, uh, advertising, marketing, uh, casinos,
Right.
you know, um,
Well, it's all
and of
gambling.
course, banking. I mean, we can't forget banking.
Yeah.
And there's a few others. But the point is that if money went away, no one would have to do those jobs. So we have 80% of us not doing anything. And of the necessary jobs, the infrastructure, the food production, and all of that, a lot of that kind of work, there are people who love to do it. But if there's not enough people that love to do it, we can fill in with robots. And I can tell you for sure, there's a whole lot of people who love to create robots.
Yeah.
For sure.
We're not going to go, oh gosh, there's just nobody that wants to do it. And of
Mhm.
course, the currency when that happens, is no longer in that tangible, you know, token form, it becomes social currency.
Sure.
If you do something because you love to do it and somebody comes along and says, "Oh man, that work is awesome."
Right.
You have been paid in praise.
For sure. Yeah,
You
because
know?
people don't understand that currency, or for that matter, capital, isn't necessarily money. It isn't. Capital can be a lot of things.
Fictitious.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
it's a thought process that we attach to the dollar, and what
for
makes
sure.
us perceive it to be so important, which it really isn't. It's just your energetic currency that you give it to call it currency.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Money equals power equals energy.
Absolutely. And lots of people will say, well, but what you're talking about is impossible. We can't do that, or blah 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 blah. And I would point to Voltaire, who said that one of the nasty things about humanity is that they throw stones at the people walking off the path, and want you to stay on that beaten path that they've been constantly doing. It is through ideas that we evolve, not through going with what we've always done. It is
True.
from coming up with new ideas. And I would also point out that my purpose in being is not 100% for sure, is not to go, even though I like my job. That's not why I'm here. My purpose for being is not to have money, is not to do this job to be a cog in the wheel for the system. My purpose in being, in my opinion, is twofold. Physically, my purpose in being is to spread love to my friends and my family, and spiritually, my purpose in being is to give love and desire for unity to God. And those are my purposes. The rat race that is earning money is what I have to do in my life based on where I'm at right now, in order to make myself be able to do those two things I just talked about. And that's not the end. That's part of
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah, no, I mean we're like in prison, and that's our license plates that we have to make to not get beaten, and to have our yard time
Yep.
when we're while we're in jail. But I wanted to say this though, like just kind of it's not really a pushback, but it's just kind of like maybe a taking it from a different angle. I look at like technological advances. Yes, there is something to be said for breaking out, going off the beaten path, doing new things. But I think there's also something to be said for the kind of the okey doke that the system, the people who run the system, whatever, have done to us, where they have caused humanity to leave behind and maybe even ridicule old traditional ways of doing things in order to empower the state and to
Right. Well,
empower powerful people, because we moved out of rural areas where we grew our own food and did
true.
all this stuff to move into the cities to work in their factories to make stuff during the Industrial Revolution. So the technological advances were good on the one hand, but on the other hand, they turned us all into
Right. Well, see,
workers.
the advantage of getting another advantage, I should say, of
Hmm.
getting rid of money has much to do with the fact that people can live the way they want to. You may be sitting there, you know, figuring out the debits and the credits in the
Hmm.
accounting
Yeah.
spreadsheet, thinking about living on a farm, raising critters,
Hmm.
feeding people with what you produce. You may be imagining that. And you get rid of money, and that becomes an option for you. And so the technophiles can go off and have all their wonderful technology, but no one's forced to have the technology.
Right.
Hmm.
And the people who want to live like the Amish, are welcome to live like the Amish as long as they're not doing anything unethical. Have at it. If people are racist, I love that term, because we're all the human race. But they can make communities that are all the same skin color and have at it.
Right.
It's like whatever. People with similar religions can, if their religion is the same or similar enough, they can congregate. People who have similar goals can do the same. For example, hey, I want to make a movie. How would you like to be my camera person? And you can
Right.
be my video editor and yada yada. And they congregate that way. Whatever interests you, as long as it's ethical. And I do want to make one thing clear for anybody that might ask about whether having sex with children is ethical. Children cannot give fully informed consent.
Amen.
Thank you
They
very much.
cannot,
Thank you.
and it is unethical to mess with them sexually in any way, and that includes grooming in schools.
Amen.
Absolutely.
So,
And to be
anyway.
clear, we don't care, and I literally do not give a shit if somebody's sexuality, I don't care if somebody likes to screw anything that consents. I don't care. I don't care what you do. I just need to point it out. I'm with Tim Pool when he says, when people mention groomers, people constantly are trying to say, well, you're anti-LGBT. And I'm like, okay, I got a lot of gay friends that would fucking be madder than hell if you suggested that they want to touch little kids.
Right.
So,
I do too.
Right.
I know a lot of gay people who are furious at the grooming. Just they hate it. In fact, there's a group. What is it? They keep getting
Gays Against Groomers.
Yeah, Gays Against Groomers. They keep getting axed out of everywhere. Oh
Right,
no, we don't
right.
want people to be ethical. Let's get rid of you.
Right, but we're the ones that are anti-gay.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so it's I guess that's another one of the little ways. So much of this stuff is so like on like a psychological level, where like
definitely.
whether it's being fostering these attachments that we have to either lifestyle or material things, or convenience, comfort, whatever the case may be, and then you have something like this where it's like, okay, so you're kind of put in this between this rock and a hard place where it's like, okay, look, I'm not saying that like consenting adults who want to do stuff that I wouldn't necessarily do, or that I don't even, I don't even think makes sense in a certain sense or whatever. It's not my business.
Right.
But then the fact that gets lumped together with some of this other stuff where it's like, no, but you can like you said, you cannot tell me that child is capable of consenting to the stuff that you're doing. Because if you look at it, like kids, one of the biggest things that children deal with, they are trying to learn the world. It starts with like infants and toddlers, where they start off with, they try to put everything in their mouth because they just think like, well, the whole world is part of me, and so I'm just going to put like whatever I see in my mouth, and I'm going to stick my hand in whatever I see. And then you, as kids continue to develop, they're as they start to develop their own autonomy and their own understanding of that they are actually separate from other people and other things, that they are not one and the same, but that there is a connection, and trying to like walk that fine line between like, I am an autonomous person with my own identity and my own sovereignty and autonomy, but also I'm part of something bigger than myself that I think is beautiful if done in the right light.
Yep.
As kids are going through that process, it's very easy for them to look for approval from adults because they don't know, and they want to know like, hey, is this okay? Is this normal? And I watched this video. This girl was talking about how this kid was talking about how these little kids, they're like 3 or 4 years old. They're like, they could be a boy or it could be a girl. And the other one's like, or they could be non-binary, and then they're applauding the kid for saying it as though the kid came up with this themselves. Like, no, the kid got all this stuff because that's what either parents
That's what
or
they were
somebody else
groomed
been
with. Yes.
exactly. That's what they were told was the, and so then it just gets really, it starts to get really creepy when like there's that much of an emphasis on pressing that stuff onto children. Like I'm of the just let the kids be kids. Let them say the stuff that they're going to say, even if you don't agree with it, because
Yeah.
it's not your place; it's the parents' place to to deal with all those other things. And finding a way to that happy medium between that and also not bullying kids to make them think that they're less than human if they say some stuff that traditionally people haven't necessarily agreed with. Like
Right.
there's a fine line between those two things where you don't have to push every kid to think that, oh, you want to have a blanket over your head, you must want to be a princess, you must want to be a girl. Like, no, not necessarily. Like, that
Yeah.
kid's 4. That
You
kid,
know,
he wanted to be a wagon yesterday.
exactly. It's really funny because when I was, and I'm very grateful I grew up when I did. When I was, oh, I don't know, 4, 5, maybe 6, somewhere in that neighborhood, I told my mom I wanted to be a boy. Not because I wanted to have the junk and have girls
Mm-hmm.
as, no, that had not, I
What was
had
it?
to sit there and learn how, I guess I was about 6. I had to learn how to sew while the guys were out there playing baseball and stuff. And it's
Ah,
like, I don't know. I want to go play.
yeah.
Right.
See, and I
I
had kind of the
want to be
opposite.
a boy.
I had the opposite thing. I didn't want to be a girl. I was just jealous. I wanted my sister to have to come out and work in the yard with us because it was the opposite. Like, she got to stay in her room and read, and all she had to do was clean up her room. We had to clean up our rooms, and then we also had to go clean up the yard, mow the grass,
Oh,
weed the
wow.
flower beds, and do all that stuff. And I'm like, why didn't she have to come out here and help us? This is ridiculous. She's a girl. She doesn't have to get her hands dirty. Like, bullshit. This is ridiculous.
Wow.
I don't consent.
In fact,
Right. So I do think that because Amy, often you talk about psychopaths and
Oh, yeah.
being the rulers of the planet, and I think that what's happened, and this is generally what I have, because I've put a lot of thought to why they're doing all this nonsense, and I think they discovered that psychopaths and sociopaths often are created by molestation. So they figure if they make that the norm, then you wind up with a bunch of psychopaths and sociopaths across the spectrum. It may not be,
Right.
the majority of people, but a whole lot more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Well,
wonder if that may not be the reason. What do you think?
well, that may be part of it, but first of all, in fact, that may be a large part of it. When you consider that there are 2 types of psychopaths. You have your primary psychopaths, which are genetic psychopaths that have a gene that manifests individuals that cannot, absolutely, no matter how much you rehabilitate them and so on and so forth, no matter what you do, they cannot feel caring, compassion, love, or empathy for others.
Right.
They cannot feel remorse. And the majority of them, not all of them, but like 90 some odd percent, lust after power over others. That is
Right.
they would rather have that than sex. And if they can get both combined, which some of them do,
Mm-hmm.
then they're in their
Jeffrey
7th
Epstein.
heaven or whatever. Whatever those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of weirdos could have. But at any rate,
Well, I think sometimes the sex too is a power trip
oh
in a
well,
lot of
yeah.
cases, right? So like
Yeah.
even when it's sex, it's still power.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's not because they want to please the one they're with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then you have the secondary psychopaths. And these are the ones that are conditioned. They can be severely indoctrinated. Okay. And that is, a lot of people in certain groups wind up being indoctrinated severely from birth with their group's ideologies and whatnot. It can be a desire to, and I'm going to put this in quotes, succeed, i.e., make lots of money, which to me isn't success.
Yeah.
Success is counted in the people who respect you, who pay respect, who pay admiration, who pay, you know, lauds and stuff. That's success. But at any rate, they want success, so they've learned to turn off their caring, compassion, love, and empathy for others. And so, if the psychopaths in control can twist us enough into an indoctrinated state where we have turned off our caring, compassion, love, and empathy, then they have more to work with and can manipulate and mold the society even to a greater extent. So yeah, that it may be that that's a big part of what they're doing. I do know that, I, I mean, I'm going to admit this. I was taken to satanic rituals.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, from about the age of 2 till the age of 5. My my mother's sister married this man, and they had kids that were, or pardon me, children. I don't like referring to human being children as kids because those are goats. Anyway, uh, I had a cousin that was like 9 months older than me, and then my sister had a cousin. We had cousin. The second cousin in the line was about my sister's age. She was a few months older, and so what this man, and I will not call him an uncle because he's not. He has never been related to me in any way. This man who married my mother's sister uh, would suggest that I come over and spend the night with the cousin that's roughly my age, and when the cousin that was my sister's age went over to my house, my parents' house, and then what would happen would be, he'd come in and get me, and then take me to these rituals, and the last one was the one where a friend that I had developed the relationship with through going to these rituals was murdered on the altar.
No.
And yeah, I had
Holy
blocked
cow.
it from my memory for many years, but until I read somewhere that Satanists will sometimes sacrifice the children of members of the group without telling them. And what happened was, I remember, the memories just came flooding in when I heard that. I mean, the first thing I thought was the scream, which was the mother realizing that it was her daughter that was dead on the altar.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
And from there, the memory spread forward and backwards and picked up things that I did remember, but never had any context for. Like walking down this hill in downtown San Diego with the man who married my mother's sister. I had no idea what that was attached to, but when all these came back, it was like, oh my gosh. And I remember, you know, there was a pounding on the door to the building we were in. We were upstairs, and the man who married my mother's sister went downstairs. Meanwhile, they're saying, "Get the kids out of here! Get the kids!" And they shoved us. But we had gone into this ritual with masks and gowns, so nobody knew which kid was what. And that's how they got her onto the altar
Oh my God.
for the ritual, because the mother didn't know that was her kid that was there, her child. And so when I got home, the man who married my mother's sister brought me home, and I had been told that she was dead, and it just freaked me out. And I ran to my mother and threw my arms around her legs and said, saying, "She's dead, she's dead." And my mother's like, "What?" And she looks up at the man who married my mother's sister, and he says, "Oh, she just had a bad nightmare." And I kept saying, "No, it was real." And, we went back and forth. And finally, my mom said, "Look, just forget." I mean, he had long gone. I kept insisting, and she kept saying, "No, no, no, it couldn't be." So I just forget it. And so she decided that I had nightmares when I didn't sleep at home.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and well, which was good because she didn't let me go back again.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And so in the long run, that worked out in my favor. And I still, for all of that, I am extremely ethical. I am extremely caring of my fellow human beings.
Yeah, I think that sometimes just real quick, I think they make a mistake in that, like from Firefly, the show with the Reavers, they don't understand that when these kinds of processes don't click and don't make you a psychopath, they make you the opposite, which seems to be what happened with you.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. When the memories came back, I mean, that was like all these stories of Satanists that people were laughing. I'm thinking, I bet they're all true. I know that I've got enough to suggest that some of them were. And the interesting thing is that this man who married my mother's sister was in the entertainment industry. Okay. So yeah, it seemed, I do remember being taken to a Navy ship. And I don't know if you've heard all the stories about the Navy and some of their satanic elements.
I have not, but I
Oh,
don't doubt it.
yes. What's his name? Michael Aquino?
Yeah, I know Michael Aquino. I don't know him
Okay.
personally, but I know
Well,
who he
no,
is.
but you know who I'm talking about. I don't know that he was in the Navy, but he was in the armed forces. He was like a general or, one of those.
For those that don't know, Michael Aquino is, if I'm not mistaken, currently the leader of the Temple of Set, which is an offshoot of the Temple of Satan of Anton LaVey's.
Yes. And yeah, he's quite a character.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, we were talking about all this. This is kind of like all this stuff is kind of coming back, like bundling up together to a certain degree. I kind of feel about like what Marcus and I were talking about, like participating in the system, because there are these things that we feel like attached to, like our ability to make money and provide for our family and those kinds of things. That's one of the things that the comforts of the system, so to speak, appeal to is, and there's a virtue in that, like, right, like wanting to provide for your family and do those things.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff, you're talking about the entertainment industry, and you've seen it a lot with Disney and Nickelodeon and some of these big and Hollywood in general. It appeals to people's vanity. You want your kid to be a child actor because then that raises your status. It raises their status. They're the one that's in the commercial. Then they're the one that's in that TV show. They're the one that's in that movie, and all that stuff. they're more than willing, and we saw it with all the the Me Too stuff with the casting couch and everything. And I'm not saying that what the women endured wasn't inappropriate and horrible and everything else, but there's a reason why they were susceptible to that. It's because they wanted the roles, they wanted their name in
Yep.
lights, and the casting couch became the vehicle through which that access came. And so I look at this
Deadly
stuff and
sins.
I'm like, man, this is what. Yes, exactly, exactly. You appeal to the vanity, and now all of a sudden you've got people who are willing, and we're seeing it now with a lot of this stuff. We have a lot of these discussions in another group that I'm in about like the AI stuff, and I don't know if y'all have seen some of this stuff. This stuff is just absolutely wild. I'm going to show this real quick. So this is, they have these artificial intelligence generated images for like party pics or whatever that
Mhm.
they do. If you can see, maybe I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Look at how many fingers this girl has holding up this phone. Oh shoot, come on now. Look at that. She's got at least 7 fingers on that one hand.
Wow.
And then this phone, what is this monstrosity of a phone that they have here? But what I'm getting at is that, so like Marcus, I don't know if you noticed, but like we used to have this AI image that I made of like the Anarchy logo and everything. I took it down. Like I've started like looking at this stuff, and I don't feel comfortable with it anymore. Like I think that there's a certain element of this where it's like through the convenience of this stuff and through the, oh, look how cool this made my face look, or look how cool this made this thing look that I made, and now I don't have to do this work that I would have had to do to make this art myself. I just made some fake art. It's letting something in to us that I don't feel comfortable letting in anymore. I'm like, I'm done with it. I'm not doing it. Same thing with the Chat GPT. I don't know if you guys seen that stuff. People are like doing articles, and they're doing, homework assignments and papers where they just tell the Chat GPT, they're like, write me a paper about the Gettysburg Address.
Yep.
And then it'll just write the thing for them, and it does like plagiarism checks and everything, so that there's no way you can find anything like it
It's
verbatim
stealing away
Right.
from creativity.
Yes,
It's stealing
but
away from like natural human
right.
behaviors and things of that nature.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you're stunting your own creativity and your own outlet for your own expression as a human being,
True.
and
Rebelling yourself.
you're taking this easy way out to like to like, what are you gaining from this? What's the point of? And I get there's some of this stuff where they're like, hey, write me a SOP for such and such, and then you can just like go through and read. Okay, well, let me change this item 3. Let me change this. Whenever I get the temptation, I just think that like everything that I look at, and I'm like, this is too good to be true.
Easy
It's
isn't
because it
better.
is. It's
Yeah.
because it's too good to be true, and it's going to have some harsh consequences.
For sure. So, Amy, where do you think we go from here? What's the next step that we should be, aside from what we talked about earlier with trying to reduce the impact of the state on our lives? Where do we go? Because in the real world, people are dying because of the state. In the real world, people are being stolen from because of the state.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Where do we go? What can we do?
That is something I've been trying to figure out for the last, let's see, how many years? 18 at least. Well, actually, I was kind of putting all this together for the 30 years. And, but it was about 18 years ago that I read Entropy by Rifkin, where he pointed out that all money is stored energy credits. And I went, bingo, free energy credits. I know about the free energy. Now I know about the energy credit. And I've been trying to do that for, figure out how to get us to move away for like I said, 18 years. And I really wish I had an answer other than to say, keep telling people we do not have to consent.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them every opportunity you get. And hopefully they will start realizing that's probably in the long run in their best interest. And
Agreed.
again, I don't know whether, I should give my friend's email address because he still does the work despite not having the site.
What you could do is I
Just
would
give it
direct
to me.
people. Yeah,
Right. We'll spread it out one by one.
I would
He'd love
direct.
it.
Yeah, I would direct people to contact you via a Twitter.
That's good. Yeah.
And
Yeah, Twitter's a good one.
I'll hit you up when my taxes hit.
On what?
I said I'll come and ask you about everything when my taxes return hits.
Well, I don't
Right on.
take money. I know that seems weird coming from somebody who's has no home and no real income beyond what feeds,
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But I don't take money, so I'd be happy to give you whatever I could. But he does do that for a living, and I'm not sure what his cost is to do everything for you. But at one point it was $1,500, but I think with the way the universe has gone, it's now $2,000. But I'll tell you, in the long run, that's $2,000 very, very well spent.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
No doubt.
So.
And it's going to take all of us working together like that, being able to find like, I'm good at this, you're good at that, Nicco's good at this, Chad's good at that, to be able to get this together. Because when the world because what I'm afraid of is we're not going to get it together. What I'm afraid of, because at the end of the day, these fools do not know what they're fucking doing, people. People want to appeal to authority and give authority all this credit for nothing. They do not know what they're doing. They're about to blow the planet up right now. Right now, we are on the brink of a nuclear confrontation.
Well,
so what I'm saying is, if we don't find a replacement for what these shit clowns are doing, we're going to be in trouble. We don't want to be pulling ourselves out of a nuclear holocaust to start society.
Yeah,
We've got to get this done.
I'm going to be honest with you after examining some evidence, which I'm not sure with the castrated web you can find anymore.
Sure.
But I have to give higher probability that nuclear bombs are much the same as can I say it? The C virus.
Oh yeah, no,
beer virus.
I feel you. I kind of think the same thing, that it's like a way to get people
I'm going to give that
afraid.
the highest probability.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence that over in Japan, there was the two cities looked like carpet bombing of any city.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have come out and said that's what it looked like. And one person said that they took some sediment from a lake nearby. I forget whether it was Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but one of those two. And discovered that there was a layer in the lake of, burnt stuff, ashes and whatnot from when the city burned.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years went by and there was a layer of radioactivity. Now, I'm sorry, if that really had been a bomb of the sort they say it would be.
Should have been more than 2 years.
No, it should have been at the same time as the burning of
you mean that it didn't hit until 2 years later?
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody
that's what I'm saying.
Somebody planted some radioactive stuff. Okay?
Well, I mean,
basically because they wanted to have something. Oh, look, radioactivity. See, it's true. Okay.
Building 7 has entered the chat.
Building. Oh gosh, that one. No, there's absolutely no way that fell down from office fires.
Right. But I buy that, and it could all just be a psyop from the powers that be. But at the end of the day, they're still busy.
Oh
picking
yeah,
up
they're still
quarrels between
busy
nations.
messing with us,
Right.
building fear, building panic,
That's the part.
building,
Yep.
you know, uh, not knowing what's going to happen, that kind of stuff. And me, I watch all that and I look at it as a play, because there are things like, do you really think that if this was really a war, that we would announce to the world that we're almost out of X weapon?
Right.
Well, that's exactly what they did. They said, oh, well, all these missiles or whatever, we don't have enough. You don't announce that to the world if you're really at war. You don't want your enemy to know you're weak.
No, they routinely violate every principle in Art of War by Sun Tzu,
Yes,
because it's all kabuki theater. And I wanted to say, like, when you think about this from the standpoint of actual spiritual warfare, that what's more important is what they're doing. What you said about fear, what they don't care what side wins or loses. They don't care as long as people are hating each other, scared of each other, scared of the system, scared of as long as they can play on those emotions and feed off of those emotions, then they can direct you in whatever direction they want to send you to make you do things that, and like the Voltaire quote that Marcus put out the other day, that if they can make you believe in absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. It's that sort of, when you think about it from like the demonic perspective, if there's someone who has the destruction of human souls and human will as its goal, then whether they nuke the planet or not is immaterial, because you actually give some of those souls an opportunity to not succumb to the fear because they're dead already. Whereas if you can just make them scared to death all the time, then you're there's a lot more. I go back to Monsters Inc. There's a lot more fear to feed off of, to fill your little energy cartridges when you're just scaring people and they're staying alive.
I will be very honest, being one who was raised without religion. Lots of love, not counting the man who married my mother's sister. Lots of love and lots of ethics. And I've studied many religions, many religions, for many years, finding gems of truth in mountains of dogma.
Yeah.
And I still have no religion. So
I just made my own up.
Hey, that works. And really, I keep telling people, I do not care what you believe. I care whether you choose your behavior ethically.
Yeah.
That's all I care about.
For sure.
You can believe that the moon is going to come down and do a song and dance, if that's what you want to believe.
And I promise, if you take enough LSD, it will happen.
There you go. But it's like, I just, in fact, really, I don't care if you believe that you have a right to go murdering everybody you see, as long as you don't.
Right. You don't actively do it.
Believe it all you want. Your actions are what count. So,
for sure.
I don't know about the demonic stuff. Maybe. I don't rule it out. But I also don't have any evidence specifically to say for sure. What I recall of the satanic rituals, there was never any demons showing up. They just went through these rituals and did these things, and that was the end of it.
I have a friend named, he wouldn't care if I gave it. His name's John Smith. So good luck finding him.
Yeah. Where he's at.
That's going to be my name. That's going to be my name now too.
Right. So I have a friend whose actual name is John Smith. And he said, you know how you can tell that, because to be blunt, I have had some experiences. I have seen demons. They are real. But one of the things he's talking about, the satanic rituals, particularly you were talking about Aquino earlier and LaVey's student, and particularly talking about LaVey, he said, I know that their rituals don't work. And the reason that I know that their rituals don't work is because they use Enochian, which is a angelic language, very long story, that that was found by John Dee and Edward Kelly.
Yep.
And the Satanic Church uses the calls, and they change out word. Like every time it says like a God name, like it'll say something about God, they'll put in like Beelzebub, or they'll put in, you know, Lucifer, or they'll put somebody else's name in there where a name for God was. And those calls work. I know, I've used them. They do work. But the ones that have the demon names, some angel didn't show up and say, what the fuck are you thinking, calling me Beelzebub? Because we're talking about angels. They're going to be shitty that somebody called them Beelzebub or called them, you know, Baal or whatever name they called them. So they're going to be mad that they were called by that name. So obviously it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because I've also had enough experience with the Enochian spirits that they are not, you know, when we think of angels, we think angels are little fluttery things that float around and are always nice. Read the fucking Bible. Read any of the extra biblical things, such as the Zohar or those sorts of things. Angels are not always nice. They can be complete and total assholes to people that are opposing God. So, so if these people are calling demons using Enochian, then obviously it doesn't work. And that's what John had said. Because, you know, I agree with you. It for me, God, to say that God can only touch your heart through a particular religion, this is my opinion, is saying that God has limitations. And I don't believe in a God that has limitations. I believe that that God is reaching out to every single one of us, regardless of what we call ourselves. If we call ourselves a Buddhist, whether we call ourselves a Christian, whether we call ourselves whatever, that God is reaching out to us because he wants more than anything else to have a relationship with us. And because we are part of him and he wants us in our kingdom, or in his kingdom. And so to me, to say that this religion is the only way is putting a limitation on God that just does not exist.
You know, I don't know if I mentioned my spiritual experience.
You did not.
Because I am spiritual. I'm just not religious in any way. I had an experience, and actually I posted it here, but I can just read it because it's easier for me if I read things.
Sure.
Because there it is. Okay. One day, nearly 10 years ago, and this was written, 5 years ago? So about 15 years ago. I was doing something. What? I cannot remember. Suddenly, I found myself expanding, contracting. And then I was everything. All time, all space, all dimensions, infinitely. And simultaneously, I was nothing. No time, no space, no dimension, no thing. I was me, you, every conscious being, all life, all matter, unaware, all ether, the whole of the multiverse. I was that point that is inside the all, everywhere, and nowhere. When I, quote, returned, unquote, if that's the right word, I had no details. I could not tell you anything about you and your life that you do not present to me here and now. I did, however, come back with the awareness that consciousness is God. Consciousness creates the now. All things are consciousness at some level of awareness. Now is the only thing that's real, and that we, as conscious, aware beings, are co gods co creating the now. And surely one cannot argue that now is not the culmination and aggregate of all the choices we all have made. The
I
end.
like it. I like it. Chad?
Yeah, no, I
And
don't know.
then
Are we yeah, are we I know
Yeah,
we're
we're
getting
gonna
close to
for
the
sure.
to your time and my time because I have my son's basketball game to go to.
Ah,
Yeah,
I
unfortunately.
apologize. Yeah. But no, that it's always interesting to and I guess when you said something about the demons, I think a lot of times we expect maybe some of the stuff to show itself, and a lot of times what you'll see is the way that people are acting is actually like I don't know, there's an influence coming from somewhere because people will act in a way that is just I don't know, it's somewhere, it's coming from somewhere else, it seems like.
Mhm.
um so I think a lot of this stuff is more unseen than seen, but regardless, like it's back to what you were saying, like the idea of having a thought versus what your behavior and how ethical your behavior is. That's kind of where I tend to, you shall know them by their fruits. That's the
yes,
thing, and so that's
exactly.
where I kind of try to focus my attention. Nicco.
Uh, no, I would just like to say your description of God and like there's a movie called where everything all at once. It came out in 2020. If you can like check that movie out, that
Okay.
became one of my favorite movies of all times because it basically depicted what you said, but with an interesting storytelling.
Nice.
Um,
Cool.
so um, yeah, if you guys give that chance, give that movie a shout out. But also, uh, thank you very much for coming onto the show.
Oh,
Always,
thank you for having me, you
it's
guys.
always a blessing.
For sure.
So I
Absolutely.
did most definitely
Absolutely.
stop by your channel and was watching a couple of your videos. I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, there's a lot more like hidden stuff that's in plain sight that we don't really recognize. And so it was pretty
Thank
fun.
you so much for watching, and I'm very humbly grateful that I gave you some ideas.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. But thank you.
Mm,
Absolutely.
my pleasure.
So as we wrap up, Amy, thank you again for joining us. I want to put a movie plug in there too. I haven't seen the one Nico's talking about, but I have seen What the Bleep Do We Know Anyway, which is a
Mhm.
really good exploration into where physics and God connect. And so I suggest that. But again, I really appreciate you joining us. And if anyone is looking for you, they can find your links below. Chad, do you have something to finish with?
I just want to plug the movie Die Hard 2 because that's what I felt like I was in this morning when I was on the tarmac in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and there was like a foot of snow on the ground, and they had to de-ice the plane for like an hour. I saw all the stuff out there. I'm like waiting for the terrorists to come and Bruce Willis to ride by on a snowmobile, and so anyway, no, I'm just joking. It's all good stuff. No, this is great, and yeah. So I want to ask this question. I asked the audience for questions way back, and now we have one. So Amaterasu, what's the reason for that name?
Oh, yeah. A friend gave me that name years ago. He didn't even really realize that what he had going there was the Shinto goddess of the sun. And the solar came from the fact that I was trying to fill in a comment form on some website, and they would not take my comment without a last name.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
that just popped into my head, and it's been that way ever since. So,
So you were almost Amaratat. I can't say it. You were
Ama
almost.
Amaterasu.
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 I'm not Japanese, but you're like. But
You don't have to
Neither
be
am I,
Japanese to put the T in
actually.
the right place.
right, I'm
Damn,
sorry,
man.
I'm messing it up because
That's
I was gonna
okay.
make a joke because she could have been Amaratsu Smith, but,
Yeah.
but
I could have been,
instead,
could have been. But I figured, since she was a solar goddess, that Solar was
Yeah.
good. I didn't want solar because it just didn't flow quite the way I wanted. And that's how you say it in Spanish. So,
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
so it's Amaterasu Solar.
That's right, Amy.
Amy, yes, you got it.
Sorry,
Bellissimo.
I'm a hillbilly from Indiana. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
So thank you very much again for for joining us, and I look forward to continuing our friendship on. Unfortunately, I'm not on Float like it used to be, just because I don't have fucking time to keep up with all this shit. That's why that thing I was talking with Chad about might be a good idea
Yeah.
coming up. But I appreciate you being here, and for those that have not sought you out, definitely do so. You definitely bring a good perspective and a rooted perspective in ethics. Some people may not, because a lot of people I think I'm still trying to get over the money thing, just to be blunt.
Yep.
But I get it. My brain's not there yet.
No, I
And
know what you mean. I
yeah,
know what
Well,
yeah, for sure.
a few
So-
thousand years of indoctrination will do that to a people.
Yes.
Right. For sure. For sure. And I'm with Konkin. We will beat this beast because
Yes.
we have truth on our side.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you being here, and hopefully sometime in the future we'll have you back. It's been great. And everybody knows what we do from here. Stay free.
Peace, y'all.